Hello and welcome to Who's the Bossk? It's a Star Wars podcast from laughingplace.com. My name is Mike Celestino. I am your host. I am the lead Southern California reporter and editorial director for Star Wars content at Laughing Place. This is episode number 205 of Who's the Bossk, and we will be discussing the new animated miniseries from Lucasfilm. It's called Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy. Very excited to talk about this. And for that conversation, I have invited back on the show my friend and fellow Laughing Place contributor, Alex Reif. Alex, how are you? How's it going? What's been going on?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me on. I'm
Yeah,
looking
thanks for
forward
doing
to
the
it.
show again. Yeah, love having you on always. You have done at least one episode every season, so glad to have you back here. Tell me a little bit about what you've been up to and what kind of stuff you've been covering lately at Laughing Place.
Yeah, I cover a lot of TV, and given that it's mid to late September right now, TV is really dominating my world. A lot of new shows. I've been recapping Only Murders in the Building. I've got a review ready to go tomorrow for the new FX American Sports Story show from Ryan Murphy. This one's on Aaron Hernandez. And then I'm also going to be recapping the new ABC series High Potential, which premieres tomorrow night.
Okay.
So that's kind of been taking up a lot of my time. I feel like I just kind of got done with D23, even though I know it was
Right.
beginning of August, but like there was a lot of backlogged content out of that.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to be heading down to your area tomorrow for an early look at Moana 2. So that'll be exciting.
Excellent. Sweet. So mostly TV, but yeah, we've got some big movies coming up this fall. As a reminder, we are recording this live via the Laughing Place YouTube channel. If you are watching along live, feel free to comment or ask any questions that you may have, and we'll be happy to address them to the best of our ability. Like I said, Alex, I think this is your fifth time on the show overall out of 5 seasons. So you are up to the fifth and final level of the 5 Star Wars questions. I provided you the questions in advance. You feel ready for these?
Ish, yeah. I didn't have a lot of time to think about them, but yeah,
Okay.
I will answer them to the best of my ability.
Okay. The first of the 5 Star Wars questions, level 5. What do you have a favorite Star Wars movie poster?
Yeah, I feel like everyone's answer is probably that episode 1 teaser of Anakin Skywalker's shadow being Darth Vader.
Yeah.
But prior to that, I first got into Star Wars with the special edition re-release in the late
Yeah.
90s. That was like my entry point. And I remember those posters really well. So I think I'm going to go with the Return of the Jedi
Okay.
poster from that re-release, because Return of the Jedi has been my favorite of the original trilogy. I know it's an unpopular opinion. You're welcome to fight me, and I will
I
recede
feel
and
like that
admit I'm
gets
wrong.
more and more popular. I've seen more and more people picking Return of the Jedi as their favorite.
Yeah, I'm just an Ewoks fan, but like them's fighting words at a Star Wars celebration, so I'm always a little wary, depending on who I'm talking to say which of the original trilogy is my favorite. So yeah, I'm gonna go with that one, the '97, I think, re-release special
Yeah.
edition of Return of the Jedi movie poster.
I think when I picked mine, I said the Empire Strikes Back special edition poster because I think it's one of the few Star Wars movie posters that is just the bad guys, you know? It's like
Yes.
all the Imperial ships and Darth Vader and the Emperor. Um, so yeah, those are some great posters, the Drew Struzan art for the special editions. And then it's funny that you mentioned the teaser poster for the Phantom Menace because they redid it for this Lego Star Wars special that we're going to be talking about with Jar Jar Binks in place of Anakin Skywalker, but the shadow is still Darth Vader in the background. But it's a
Yes.
it's a funny poster, and we'll be talking more about that in a bit. Number 2, what is your favorite Star Wars fight scene or action sequence?
Yeah, I mean, again, I keep going back to like episode 1 answers that are probably everyone's favorite, but like Duel of the Fates is really hard
Yeah,
to top. Um, I mean, the rest of the movie might not be spectacular, but that scene was, and
right.
the music was. So I'm going to go with that.
Yeah, recently resaw Phantom Menace on the big screen for the 25th anniversary, and yeah, that lightsaber fight really holds up. The pod race is really cool too. I do have my problems with the film, but it's hard to argue with those two action sequences for sure. Number
Yeah.
3, in your opinion, who has the coolest on-screen Star Wars costume? And please be specific. So don't just say Han Solo. I want you to say Han Solo after he gets unfrozen from carbonite, or you know what I'm talking about. Who has the coolest
Yeah.
costume?
So even though the prequel trilogy is not my favorite, I think the costumes in it were spectacular. I think Princess Leia was always fairly basic in the original trilogy, but Queen Amidala really elevated everything. So I looked it up because I
Yeah.
didn't know the name of this. I guess they call it the Lakeside Gown. It's from Episode 2,
Yes.
one of Padme's looks, and I didn't know the terminology ombre when the movie came out, but I think that's why I like it. That it cascades from like yellow to kind of an orange to a purple finish. I know Ashley Eckstein's hoodie based on that at Star Wars Celebration, I think the one in Anaheim, and it sold out. But I was looking at it a little bit like, well, it doesn't look like uber feminine. I could maybe pull it off, and I'm sad I didn't get it.
Yeah, I've noticed that that's a popular choice for cosplayers. That lakeside gown, yeah, really, really pretty costume. And like you said, there are a lot of great costumes that Padme wears throughout the prequel trilogy. Number 4, if okay, this is the negative one of all the 25 total Star Wars questions. If you could erase one piece of Star Wars media or one element of the Star Wars franchise from existence, what would you choose?
So I should have thought about this better. I feel like a lot of people's choice is Jar Jar Binks. I would de-Jar Jarify the Star Wars universe. However, this Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy special somewhat redeems Jar Jar in a lot of
Right,
ways. We'll talk
right.
about that later. So I would remove Jar Jar from the face of the Star Wars universe, except for in this special, this series,
Okay.
I guess.
Yeah, I feel like Jar Jar has had this kind of reevaluation, mostly because the kids who grew up on him are now adults, but also I think in favor of supporting Ahmed Best, the actor, which I think is totally fair. Nothing of what we dislike about Jar Jar, I think, is his fault. He definitely put his all into that performance, and he has recently, he did the Jedi Temple kids game show thing on YouTube. He did an episode of The Mandalorian where he reprised that character and ended up being the one who saved young Grogu from Order 66. And now he's back again as Jar Jar in this special that we're going to talk about. So, yeah, with rose-colored glasses, we look back on Jar Jar a little bit more favorably, I think. But I totally get that response. Number 5, the fifth and final of the 5 Star Wars questions. This is more looking forward into the future. What do you personally want to see happen with Star Wars in the future?
Yeah, I feel like Star Wars has expanded in so many ways with things like a preschool series, reality shows, things like that. I kind of want to see Star Wars go in a sports direction, somewhat inspired by Harry Potter yielding like college campus Quidditch teams. Like I would
Right.
love to see something like that be born out of Star Wars, be it like some kind of a like the Japanese Mario karting through the streets of Tokyo with
Yeah.
pod racing or something like that. Like I just want to see Star Wars get into the sports space in some
Oh,
way like that.
pod racing would be fun if they could figure out a way to do that. I know, like, if you look at the like TV screens in the bar in Attack of the Clones, there's a few different Star Wars sports being played in that bar sequence. So I know there are
Yes.
sports happening around somewhere in the Star Wars universe. None of them have quite caught on in the real world just yet. Just like card games is the closest thing that we have, I think, with Sabak and Dejarik is kind of the hollow chess game too. But yeah, Star Wars sports, that would be quite interesting to explore. Okay, that's the 5 Star Wars questions. Let's throw to a pre-recorded interview. I got to talk with the two writers of Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy. Their names are Dan Hernandez and Benji Samit. They are the co-writers of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, which is a really fun movie that I saw last year. And now they're back and they did this Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy miniseries for Disney Plus. Really talented guys. It was so great to meet them and chat with them. And this interview is not terribly long. It's about 7 minutes, I think. And if you're watching this live on YouTube, you're not going to hear it. Just come back later on, listen to the audio version of this podcast, and you'll hear my interview with Dan Hernandez and Benji Samit. Here we go. And that was my interview with Dan Hernandez and Benji Samit, the screenwriters behind Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy. So thank you to Lucasfilm and Disney for helping us set up that interview. And thank you to the two guys for chatting with me. I got to meet them in person as well at the little premiere event that they did at El Capitan. We'll talk about that in a minute. But first, let's get into some Star Wars headlines for this week. Obi-Wan Kenobi himself, young Obi-Wan, Ewan McGregor, received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame this past week with help from his co-star, Hayden Christensen, who, of course, played young Anakin Skywalker. Well, the middle-aged, teenage Anakin Skywalker, and then reprised that role in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series with Ewan McGregor just a couple years ago. Did you get to watch any of this ceremony, Alex?
I haven't. I should check it out. I was actually on Hollywood Boulevard not long before it happened, and I walked by his star, which is like near the Jimmy Kimmel theater by El Capitan, and there was like a funky looking star on the ground. Like it was all like globby and weird, and I was like, what is up with that star? And that ended up being the Ewan McGregor star. I don't know why it was looking all bubbly and funky prior to it being replaced, but yeah, it looked gnarly, and now it is a Jedi star.
Maybe that's how they take out the pre-existing blank star to put in the...
Maybe they do some crazy chemical on the pavement that makes it disintegrate. I don't know.
Yeah, I also got to see the star itself right after the event, the Rebuild the Galaxy event. I saw it on Hollywood Boulevard there. Like you said, it's right just like steps away from the El Capitan Theater in front of the Jimmy Kimmel part of the street there. So yeah, you can watch that video on YouTube. We've got a post about it on laughingplace.com if you want to see more about Ewan McGregor finally getting his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And Hayden Christensen gives a nice speech for his friend and co-star in those Star Wars prequel films. Next up, so this is interesting. There's a lawsuit happening right now between a friend of actor Peter Cushing's, who played Grand Moff Tarkin in the original Star Wars film. And this friend of Peter Cushing's is now suing Disney and Lucasfilm for using Peter Cushing's likeness in Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Now, I'm sure everybody out there has seen Rogue One. You remember how they kind of recreated Grand Moff Tarkin in that movie. And this kind of got a mixed response, I would say. Like, it tends to happen with these CGI generated, either de-aging the characters or recreating deceased actor's performance. They did this in the new Alien Romulus movie. And they did it in Rogue One as well. I don't understand. The only question I have about this is, this movie came out in 2016. It's been 8 years. Like, why wait so long? And then I also don't understand, like, why Disney and Lucasfilm wouldn't make sure that they had the rights to use the likeness. I'm sure they cleared it with his family or whatever. Alex, do you know anything more about this case?
I don't know a lot. I have some thoughts. One of them being, I know with Disney parks and having walk around characters, they generally don't do them for live action performances of anything modern, which is why, like, Hocus Pocus witches, you'll only find them at Halloween time when they're mini Donald and Clarabelle, mini Daisy and Clarabelle dressed up as the Sanderson sisters. But to put actors, like face characters, out there pretending to be Bette Midler, Sarah Jessica Parker, Kathy Najimy, my understanding is they have to pay them something per,
Okay.
the kind of merchandising licensing agreements that were signed in the 90s for those things. And those kinds of contracts didn't exist prior to like something like Star Wars making merchandising such a big part of the pie of film's revenue. So like my understanding is Johnny Depp like waived his Jack Sparrow fees for Disney because he personally wanted that character out and about in the parks. But that's
Mhm.
why, for the most part, you don't see live action characters roaming Disneyland or any Disney parks around the world. Um,
But
so
I mean,
Mary
an exception
Poppins,
would be like Ray in Galaxy's Edge is a face
yeah,
character.
yeah, and so I don't know what kind of deal they might have made with Daisy Ridley for something like Ray, but like Mary Poppins is a good example of like an evergreen legacy face character based on an
Yeah.
actor's likeness, Julie Andrews, that completely predates anything like that in a star's contract for a film. So I'm guessing Peter Cushing in this case, being from the first Star Wars in 1977, before the Star Wars merchandise became what it is, he probably didn't have any kind of a clause in his contract other than we own this character, we own this likeness in perpetuity. So I'm going to guess it's the kind of thing where Disney probably in good faith should have reached out and made sure the family was okay with it. And maybe they did. I don't know who this friend is or what right he
Yeah.
has to all this information. I know nothing about Peter Cushing other than he played Grand Moff Tarkin. But other than that, I know I'm guessing the precedent that was set that opens the door for this kind of a lawsuit now instead of 8 years ago is the recent SAG-AFTRA strikes,
Yeah.
prohibiting anything from AI
Okay.
or likenesses being used. And now that is the norm going forward, I'm guessing he's hoping he can retroactively get a piece of
Hmm.
the Rogue One money. Because in addition to his likeness being used, I believe there were Hasbro Black Series figures with the Rogue One branding of Grand Moff Tarkin, probably a new face sculpt to go along with that, like all of
Hmm.
those kinds of things that like nowadays, if you're a Marvel actor, if you're Chris Evans and they're face scanning you for a Hasbro toy, you've got a piece of that sales coming
Yeah.
at you. And actors from a certain time ago didn't get any of that.
I wonder if another part of this puzzle is what happened with Crispin Glover in Back to the Future Part 2. Have you heard this story how they took a mold of his face, the actor Crispin Glover, in the original Back to the Future to make him look, to put old age makeup basically on him when he's playing the 30-year-old version of himself in 1985, basically. But then when he didn't return for part 2, they used that mold to make another actor look like him in the 2015 part of the movie when he's like upside down floating. And he's like, "Oh, I threw my back out on the golf course again," whatever. And then Crispin Glover sued Universal, and this led to a whole, I think, a new law about the use of likenesses in sequels and stuff like that. So I wonder if that is in some way related as well. But again, neither you or I are copyright lawyers or anything like that.
No,
But
pure
yeah,
speculation. But yeah, I'm guessing that I didn't know that story. Actually, I didn't realize it wasn't Crispin Glover upside down in Back to the Future
yeah,
too. So, but yeah, that's cool or
yeah.
not cool,
Big. That was
depending
a
on who you
big
are.
deal.
Not cool for
And
Crispin
I
Glover.
right, and I think it did set a big precedent for that kind of thing going forward. But yeah, I'm sure that, like you said, the recent strikes and the recent contracts also played a part in that. So we'll see how that shakes out. I don't know. I think in general, people are still kind of on the fence about this kind of thing. I know that did you see Alien Romulus?
I almost did by mistake. Went to see
Oh,
an IMAX screening of National Geographic's Fly, and the projectionist didn't switch the movie, which the other movie that was standard playing in that theater was Alien Romulus. So we saw all these
okay.
R-rated trailers, and then all of a sudden the 20th Century Studios logo popped up instead of the Nat Geo logo, and I saw maybe 5 minutes of Alien Romulus
Okay.
before they could correct course.
Well, I guess I won't spoil anything, but I'll say that there is a legacy alien character that returns, and they kind of did the same thing. It's a actor who has since passed away, and they brought him back using similar means. And I saw a mixed response to that as well. I don't know if this is a trend that will continue. Maybe it'll fade
Well, and
away.
it's
Yeah,
tying it back to Star Wars. I mean, when Carrie Fisher passed away between episodes of the sequel
yeah,
trilogy, they made a statement. We're not doing that with her because people, had responded so cringily to it, to make up a word,
Right.
from Rogue One. So yeah, I mean, for better or worse, I kind of wish they would have done something, because I didn't think she really fit in the last end of the
Right.
saga. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Then they ended up kind of doing it in Rise of Skywalker using like existing footage, I guess. Yeah.
yeah,
Anyway,
unused lines that made no sense in any context,
right,
but we put them in there
right.
anyway.
Yeah, it's a whole big mess. I don't know. I think people have argued that it's better to cast new actors, and I think maybe that's where I'm falling on the whole thing in the long run. But we'll see what happens as time goes by. I do want to mention the two comic books that came out last week: Star Wars Inquisitors #3 and Star Wars #50. So Inquisitors #3 I thought was fine. This miniseries is okay, I think, in general. I'm kind of waiting for the end. It's just 4 issues total, so next month will be the final issue. I kind of wait to pass judgment at that point. But this Star Wars #50 was the final issue of this current run of the main flagship Star Wars comic that takes place between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. I really like this issue a lot. We get some more of Luke. It's kind of a flash. It opens with a flash forward to Luke training Ben Solo in between the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy. And then they flash back to the period right before Return of the Jedi. And there's an adventure that happens in there that Luke uses as a lesson to teach to Ben Solo. And I thought it was kind of outside the box from where I thought this was all going, because I thought they were going to use this final issue to like set up how they were going to like break into Jabba's palace and rescue Han Solo. Instead, they went in this total other direction, which I thought was actually very interesting and something I wasn't expecting. I always like to see that kind of thing. So I would recommend picking up Star Wars #50. After this, they're going again. They're jumping ahead in time to after Return of the Jedi, and they're going to do the Battle of Jakku, which I think is like a 12 issue maxi series that will be coming out over the next few months. And I'm very curious to see what they're going to do with that, because they've already covered this in the novels, the Battle of Jakku, and now we're going to see it from, I think, different characters' perspectives. So that will be coming up soon. Let's talk about toys. Action figure reveals. Hasbro PulseCon took place this past week, and Hasbro revealed some new action figures in the Black Series. Prince Shizor. Do you know who Prince Shizor is, Alex?
No.
This is a character that they introduced in the 1996 Star Wars Shadows of the Empire multimedia project. It was one of those things where it was a comic book, a video game. They had a soundtrack, they had toys, but there was no movie. So they had like all the stuff that you would put out with a movie without actually making the movie. And Prince Shizor was the villain of that. So they're finally bringing him in and doing a Black Series action figure of this guy in the 6-inch scale. I'm very excited about that as somebody who was a big Star Wars fan around that period of the mid 90s. And then we're getting Clone Commander Bakara from Revenge of the Sith, a commando droid from the Clone Wars. Dagan Gera is the villain of the Star Wars Jedi Survivor video game. He's coming to the Black Series as well. And then in the Vintage Collection, which is a 3 3/4-inch scale action figures, we're getting a new Anakin Skywalker as he appeared in Star Wars Ahsoka, a clone trooper lieutenant from Ahsoka, Master Indara from The Acolyte, Dedra Miro from Andor, and new sculpts of the original Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia as they appeared in the original Star Wars film, Episode 4, A New Hope. And then the thing that I'm most excited about is this new Streets of Mos Eisley playset, which is just a part of what you would see as they enter Mos Eisley in the original film, the little street walls and environment. And it comes with a Jawa action figure, and that's in the Vintage Collection as well. And then lastly, they revealed a new electronic helmet for the Armorer from The Mandalorian, and actress Emily Swallow was part of the Hasbro Pulse Day stream to help reveal that. So a lot of fun toys coming up. Anything stand out to you from all that, Alex? Did you get to look at any of these reveals?
I haven't looked at them. That Streets of Mos Eisley playset sounds really cool.
Yeah,
And I think it is funny how often they redo Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia
yeah,
from New Hope. It's like every 5 years you can guarantee there will be a quote unquote new sculpt.
right. I think part of it is they have this new campaign called Return to Tatooine that they're doing, and they also wanted to release new figures to fit in with the Mos Eisley Cantina HasLab project that is coming out soon. So kind of tying in with all that stuff. But yeah, some of these I'm excited for. Some of them I won't be getting, but always cool to see new toys announced by Hasbro. And you can find images of all those over at laughingplace.com. Let's get into our main topic for today, and that's Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy. It's a 4-part miniseries. You can watch it right now on Disney Plus. It's animated. It's a lot of fun. And before we get into talking about that, I want to ask you, Alex, what is your history with the collaboration between Lego and Star Wars? I got into it, I think, day one when they released the first ever Lego Star Wars building sets back in advance of the Phantom Menace coming out, actually. And then since then there's been video games, there's been a bunch of animated series and specials, some of which I've seen, others I have not seen. How about you, Alex? What is your history with this?
Yeah, my younger sibling was into all of the Phantom Menace Lego sets that they came out with, and I remember helping them build some of those, which were a lot of fun. I've built a couple, probably more recently, mostly
Yeah.
that were like gifts and swag bags. But I was also, before you came as part of the Laughing Place team, I would cover Star Wars stuff. So I remember covering Droid Tales and Freemaker Adventures,
Okay.
particularly like DVD releases of those, which I think came with like a Lego minifigure. Like they were in a bigger box than your typical DVD set because
Yeah.
there was a toy component to it. And I think I've seen all of these Lego Star Wars collaborations. I've played at least the original trilogy video game. And I've also played I played the Lego Harry Potter games as well. So I'm fairly familiar. Also Lego Marvel. They did Lego Marvel comics. They've done some Lego Marvel specials, and then most recently they did a Lego Disney Princess collaboration about a year ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm well versed in the Lego licensed multiverse of Disneydom.
Well, first of all, I want to apologize for taking Lego Star Wars away from you when I joined Laughing Place. But
All good.
it's good that we have to between our respective time covering this stuff, we've seen all of these. I think I have not seen the Yoda Chronicles or Droid Tales, and I have not been. I know of Freemaker Adventures, but I haven't seen any of it. So I'm glad that you've seen those. But since I came aboard Laughing Place, I've covered the Lego Star Wars Holiday Special, the Terrifying Tales, and the Summer Vacation, which are the three. I think they're like mini movies. They're not really mini series like this one.
Yeah, they're like
Those were
hour-long seasonal
yeah,
specials.
exactly. Yeah, holiday specials basically because one was Christmas, one was Halloween, and one was summertime. So I enjoyed all of those, and now we get into Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy. Really quickly, I just want to tell you about two events that I attended in the last week, both of which were screenings of this mini series. The first one was at the El Capitan Theater on Hollywood Boulevard, and it was sort of the de facto premiere for Rebuild the Galaxy, although they didn't call it that. They called it a special screening, and the cast was there, the creators were there. They give a nice little speech introducing this. There were photo ops in the lobby. It was just a really fun, exciting time to get to attend that. And then over this past weekend, I went over to Century City at the Westfield Outdoor Mall there, and they did another screening. This time they only showed the first two episodes instead of all four of Rebuild the Galaxy. But this was like an outdoor screening, and it was invite only. But if you were at the mall and walking around, you could just kind of find a space to stand and watch it if you wanted to. If you didn't have Disney Plus, I guess you could just check out the first two episodes of this and then go home and sign up and watch episodes 3 and 4. But I want to thank Disney and Lucasfilm for inviting Laughing Place to cover both of those events. Both of them were a lot of fun, and you can find coverage and photos and video of all those events over at laughingplace.com. Let's talk about Rebuild the Galaxy itself. This was directed by Chris Buckley, who was, and this is his first time as a director, but he was an animator and did visual effects for The Last Jedi, Lego Movie 2, Jurassic World, and he has a nice long list, nice long filmography over on IMDb. It was written by Dan Hernandez and Benji Samit, who you heard the interview with earlier in this episode, best known previously for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, of course. Produced by Daniel Cavey, who did Star Wars Visions recently, and I think he's a Lucasfilm guy, so he's done a bunch of stuff over there. The music was written by Michael Kramer from Ninjago, which is a Lego show. The Ghost and Molly McGee, that's a Disney Channel, right?
Yes.
And then Freemaker Adventures, which we just mentioned. And the editor was Chase Ashbaugh, who did Brown Enough and My Little Pony, Make Your Mark. Okay, Alex, what were your initial thoughts after watching Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy?
Well, my biggest initial thought was at first it reminded me a little bit of Freemaker Adventures, because Freemaker Adventures followed some basically original characters in a timeline that somewhat intersected with elements of the original trilogy, which was fun. So you got like what you expect from Star Wars, but also it was very Lego and could kind of be its own thing, which I felt like this very much was. Once it kind of established its rules, it became very clear that this is almost like a child or an adult man-child has a lot of Lego Star Wars toys and is really just playing with them and putting no canon limits on who can be when and where and why and what and how, which is fun. Like, I enjoyed that aspect of it, of just kind of breaking all the rules. And letting loose in a really fun way. It was very funny. I mean, it's very lighthearted. I can't imagine people are gonna. I hope people don't like overanalyze and go too deep down it. But it was really fun. I really enjoyed it.
Well, what I was thinking by the end of this thing is, yes, they have kind of thrown away the Star Wars rule book, which is very fun. And I do think that Lucasfilm kind of uses the Lego brand and the Lego Star Wars brand specifically to have more fun with Star Wars these days, because there was that series Lego, not Lego, but just Star Wars Detours that they had made like 40 something episodes of, and they are still like sitting on a shelf at Lucasfilm, like they never released them. And I think what Lucasfilm decided between then and now is like, oh, Lego Star Wars is going to be the place where we can really play with and kind of almost make fun of the Star Wars galaxy, and everything else is going to take itself relatively seriously, I think. But by the end of this miniseries, what I was thinking was they kind of threw away the rule book and created their own, which is great. But now you almost kind of have this new like tertiary Star Wars canon. Like if this were to continue, you have this new Star Wars galaxy where, yeah, all the characters have been mixed up, the timeline has been mixed up, but it starts to create its own rules and canon that maybe wouldn't be able to be. I don't know. I guess it like the cycle begins anew, is what I'm saying. But yeah, I really enjoyed this quite a bit. I've seen it a few times at this point, and I'm just having so much fun with it. This idea that, yeah, exactly like what you said. And I think the creators in the interview said the same thing, that this is really just the idea of dumping out all your Lego minifigures and pieces and putting them together in whatever order you want and just playing around with that. So I think it definitely works in that way. It is very funny, like you said, and the story. The other thing I wanted to say is, you were reminded of the Freemaker Adventures, and I kept being reminded of the Lego Movie, which I feel like this is almost sort of the Star Wars version of the Lego Movie. The themes are kind of similar, because in the Lego Movie, this whole idea is, oh, Will Ferrell's character, the adult, the dad, he wants to follow the instructions and build everything the way that they're supposed to be. And by the end, his arc is kind of learning through his son that no, the intent of Lego is to break everything down and build everything anew using your imagination. And that is sort of the same message that we're getting here. So if you enjoyed Lego Movie, I think you will enjoy Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy. Let's go through the cast of characters. These are uh, first I want to go through kind of the main characters of this mini series. We've got Sig Griebling. By the way, most of the names of the characters here, if they're not borrowed from existing Star Wars material, a lot of these names are references to things that fans of Lego will get, little Lego Easter eggs. So um, this character's name is Sig Griebling. He's the main character of the show. He's voiced by Gaten Matarazzo. You know him from Stranger Things. Then his brother Dev Griebling is Tony Revolori. You know him from the recent Spider-Man trilogy. He's also one of my favorite movies, Grand Budapest Hotel by Wes Anderson. Yessi Scala is played by Marseille Martin. Jedi Bob, another very deep cut Lego Star Wars reference, as we talked about in the interview. He's voiced by Bobby Moynihan from Saturday Night Live and DuckTales. I'm wearing my DuckTales shirt. And then they got Luke Skywalker himself, Mark Hamill, to play a very different version of perhaps the most famous Star Wars character of them all. The droid, the Gonk droid, his name is Servo. He's voiced by Michael Cusack. If you watch an animated show called Smiling Friends, he's the creator of that. He's from New Zealand, very funny guy. Oh no, I think Australia, not New Zealand. I think he's from Australia. But lastly, of the main cast, Kevin Michael Richardson voices Farmer Scala. Did any of these main characters or voice actors stand out to you, Alex? What did you think of this cast?
I mean, the cast is great. I honestly, with the exception of Marseille Martin, because I watched a lot of Grownish, and Mark Hamill, obviously, I
Yeah.
wasn't pulled out by like individual voices per se, but like I definitely recognize Marseille Martin's voice. Mark Hamill has a lot of fun with this version of Luke Skywalker.
Right.
It's not Luke Skywalker as he's ever played him before when the cameras were rolling for consumption of Star Wars fans. But you feel like this is maybe like how he might have joked around on set when they were between takes or doing a blooper that has yet to be released.
And he has one of the best little rants. He has when they're in the Mos Eisley Marina, which is what the remixed version of the Mos Eisley Cantina is. But he has this rant about how, oh, in your galaxy, and I spent years on the island with the porgs, and then I used the force so hard that I died. Um, I just thought that whole rant was very, very funny. Kind of poking fun again at Star Wars, and especially like the recent Star Wars movies, kind of letting the air out of the tires a little bit, which is fun, and letting Luke himself poke fun at some of the stuff that people have pointed out about the recent Star Wars films. Now let's go through some of the cameo roles and appearances. A lot of fun stuff going on here. So we have D. Bradley Baker from Young Jedi Adventures reprising his role as Nubs, but this time he's Darth Nubs. We have Trevor Duvall voicing all the Akbar troopers. So all the clone troopers, instead of being clones of Jango Fett, are now clones of Admiral Akbar. Anthony
And instead of
Daniels is
saying Roger, Roger, they say it's a trap, it's a trap.
yes, and stop repeating me. Stop repeating me. Uh, um, Anthony Daniels is back as C-3PO, but a decidedly more evil version of C-3PO. Helen Sadler plays Darth Ray. Matthew Wood returns as General Grievous. Sam Witwer returns as a, again, very different version of Maul. Shelby Young is the voice of Princess Leia in this. Ahmed Best, probably another big highlight here, like you mentioned earlier, Darth Jar Jar. Some amazingly funny lines that are a lot of them are lifted right out of his appearances in the prequels. Kelly Marie Tran is back as Darth Rose Tico. Jake Green plays Greedo, very funny part there. Phil Lamar is Darth Kit Fisto. Piotr Michael, who is also from Young Jedi Adventures, reprises his role as Yoda. Matt Sloan is Jedi Vader, who is very funny. By the way, the look of Jedi Vader is another kind of deep cut Star Wars reference to a kind of an alternate universe story from a comic book called Star Wars Tales. It was basically like, what if Darth Vader had turned out to be good instead of evil? Ross Marquand is Han Solo in this. Does a very good impression of Harrison Ford, I thought. Naomi Aki is back from Rise of Skywalker playing Jedi Janna. Terrence T.C. Moore is Mace Windu. Jennifer Hale is Mon Mothma. And you know what? I'm going to leave this last one out and leave it as a surprise because it is kind of the post-credit scene, maybe setting up something in the future. Let's see. What stuck out to you about these cameo roles, Alex?
I mean, the one that sticks out to me is Darth Jar Jar, for the
Yeah.
reasons that you outlined. He's got some brilliant twists on the lines you love to hate from the prequel trilogy, and
Yes.
yeah, they're golden.
Squeeze me.
Yes, and my favorite, just his introduction, was Misa going to hurt Yusa.
Use the people gonna die is another
Yeah,
one.
yep, yeah, a
uh,
statement rather than a question.
yeah. Just so good, so well handled. And something else I wanted to mention, since you said you loved Ewoks in the 5 Star Wars questions earlier, the Ewoks play a very fun role in this too, as the bounty hunters
Yes,
of this version of the Star Wars
and
galaxy.
they will get their credits for your
Yes.
bounty. Yeah, they will not
And they
fail.
fly around in Y-wings that are decorated to look like almost the forest moon of Endor. Very creative way of remixing the Star Wars galaxy here, and I had just a tremendous amount of fun with it. And speaking of fun, we both said that this was very funny, this Rebuild the Galaxy, but I think the style of humor fits what you would see in the Lego movie and Lego Movie 2 and the Batman Lego movie and probably a lot of the other existing Lego Star Wars specials. How would you describe this style of humor?
Yeah, I'd say it's very subversive and very far-fetched. It reminded
Yeah.
me at times of something like Airplane, like that kind of a tone, where
Yeah.
some of the things that happen, you're just like, how, like, where whose sick mind did this come out of? And yet it's so funny and it all works. Um, and I also wonder partially if the writers or creators or whoever involved in the creative process didn't like observe their kids playing with toys, having not much of a reference of like who these characters are, and kind of borrowing from that. I know some filmmakers in these kinds of projects have had success borrowing those things, and even George Lucas pulled words from the prequel trilogy out of things that his kids had babbled as toddlers. So
Right.
that'd be fun.
Yeah.
Abu,
And
Abu is a toddler babbling.
yeah, it's very clear that everybody involved with this was just having a tremendous amount of fun. But let's, we've talked about what this special has in common with previous stuff, but what do you think it is about Rebuild the Galaxy that makes it unique and makes it stand out from the stuff that has come before?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the tone of it. Holiday specials gave us kind of a taste of it, I would say, but those I felt like were much more sticking within, this is the world, these are the rules,
Yeah.
and this one really throws those out far more. And there's more that they can do. Obviously, like you've teased a little bit of what could they do from here with this
Yeah.
same premise and with this franchise, but yeah, I mean, there's so much. They really only had like an hour and a half worth of content to tap
Right.
into, and you've got the whole Star Wars universe at your disposal. And as you've pointed out, a lot of deep cuts are put into this that a more casual fan like me isn't going to notice. So they can really keep digging.
All right. So now that you mentioned deep cuts, I have to ask you, and I'll give you my example and hope you if you can't think of anything, that's cool. But I want to tell you my favorite Easter egg in this whole thing is that the ships. I'm sure people are picking up on this because there's a lot of Lego fans out there. But the ship that Darth Dev is commanding near the end of the film is shaped like a big Lego brick separator. I don't know if you've seen. Yeah, exactly. That piece that comes with a lot of Lego sets these days that helps you pry apart the Lego bricks from each other. I just love that. they
It
made it
helps,
into that
but
shape.
it doesn't always work perfectly in my experience.
Right.
I have broken many a fingernail when that thing wouldn't work, and I just had to like
Yeah.
get creative.
Any other little in jokes or Easter eggs that you noticed?
I mean, one of my favorites is early on when one of the main character's friends are going to a hollow concert of Figure and Dan and the Modal Nodes, and he
Yeah.
says something like, "But I only like they only have one good song," and it's funny, like they only have one song, period, in general. But and then even when from a distance when the concert is going, it is
Yeah.
that's all they got.
Well, I'm gonna disagree with you, and I'm gonna say they have 2 songs,
Yeah.
because they have Cantina Band number 1, which is also called Mad About Me in
Hmm.
universe, but there's also Cantina Band number 2 that plays in the original Star Wars film,
But
but,
is it memorable? Is it good?
yeah,
It's
it's
the
the
B side.
B-side.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Uh, but yeah, that was very funny as well, and there's just a ton, like, I almost kinda wanted to go through and do what you did with the, Once Upon a Studio and just make a list of every Lego and Star Wars reference in this thing, but I just haven't had time.
Yeah.
It might still be worth doing, but, this past week has just been so crowded with stuff.
I can
So,
tell you, Once Upon a Studio was 7.5 minutes, and that
yeah.
article probably took me 4 hours to do. So
Yeah,
I don't think
right.
they come at you as fast in Rebuild the Galaxy, but
Yeah.
that would be an ambitious undertaking, and I wish you
There are
Godspeed.
Yeah, there's plenty of them. I even in that interview that I played earlier, I discovered a few that wasn't even aware of, like, um, the character's name, Yessi Scala. I didn't know this, but Scala was a name for one of the old Lego lines that were intended just for girls. So,
Mm.
I that one just flew over my head. I didn't know about it. I actually didn't know the origin of Jedi Bob. Are you aware of this? Where that
I
character
googled
comes
it because
from?
I read the transcript of your interview, and
Oh, yeah.
it didn't say exactly what it was. So I Wikipedia'd Jedi Bob,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's funny. It's funny how like the fan contingent can have such a huge impact to the point where like the official not that Wikipedia is owned or affiliated with Lucasfilm, but that
Right, right.
Wikipedia has a whole page devoted to the lore of Jedi Bob and how it became folded into future officially licensed Lego product.
Yep, and then it came back around, and now it's part of the show, and they've made new Jedi Bob minifigures that come with the new Lego sets for this show.
And I feel like if
Okay,
they were
yeah,
ever to introduce Jedi Bob into the like live action canon, Bobby Moynihan could transfer into that role
yeah.
there too.
In fact, I think he wore a Jedi Bob costume to the premiere the other night. So yeah, I think he has embraced. I mean, he's a big Star Wars guy. He's voiced a few Star Wars characters in the past. I know he's a fan as well. So he has
Yeah,
really
and he's been
embraced his
in
role.
The Mandalorian just behind prosthetics, so you didn't necessarily know it was him unless you read the credits. But yeah,
Yeah.
if they wanted to make him a face in the franchise, I think he's good with Jedi Bob.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool for him to reprise that role. Okay, so we kind of hinted at the end of this series, maybe pointing toward it almost kind of feels like a pilot to me because you end on an open-ended, you know, this could be continuing in the future kind of a note. I don't know. What do you think the odds are that we'll see more of this in the age of, the Acolyte not getting picked up for a season 2? Is it more likely than an animated series like this will continue?
Definitely more likely. I mean, Disney Plus. I don't know. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, animated content seems to cost less in the long run, probably due to whatever royalty rights typically come with these kinds of contracts. So I feel like they're much quicker to press renew on anything animated than they are anything live action these days. So I would say yes. I haven't looked. I'm trying to check right now if it's trending because I know it's brand new, and that often is a good indicator by scrolling through the trending to see where something lands.
Right.
I would love to see more. I think fan response will be good, and I'm curious at the next Star Wars celebration to hear like how many people are talking about it, how many people are cosplaying from it, because so many people already like to put a funny twist on things. I've seen Darth Jar Jars at Celebration before,
Yeah.
and so like I can only imagine people are going to be like, oh, now I can be all these other characters, Darth Rose Tico, and kind of go off in all these other directions. I also often see people like cosplaying as Lego characters, you know, with like boxed shoulders and painting faces
Yes.
yellow, or wearing a Lego mask. And so I would expect to see some of that as well. Um, yeah, it is fun. It does feel like a little bit like a pilot. I did have a question, particularly about the El Capitan screening. If they played the episodes exactly as they appear on Disney Plus with end credits after each one, or if they edited them almost into like a movie.
Yeah, so at the El Capitan screening, they played it all cut together like a movie, and then they cut together all 4 of the end credits at the end, so they kind of repeated one after another. It was almost kind of a joke in itself that the music kept restarting, while they were replaying the credits, but I do think it played pretty well as a movie, I would say. It's like a 90-minute almost 90-minute movie, and I almost kinda wondered, like, if they had considered making this a feature length straight to Disney Plus movie and why they instead chose to break it up into 4 individual episodes, because I think it worked that way almost better in the theater. But then I was thinking like, well, maybe kids have a shorter attention span or it's just more consumable as a series. I don't know. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely I would say the decision to make it episodic is more attention span driven.
Yeah.
Also, you know, given that this can play pretty young, and parents having like screen time limitations, especially during
Yeah.
school week, you know, I can see it being the kind of thing where their market research suggested parents are more willing to co-view this with younger kids if it's
Yeah.
shorter versus a full movie. Also, like I'll confess, I never saw the Lego movie. I did see Lego Batman, and I saw Ninjago, and I
Okay.
liked them a lot. But I remember Lego Movie 2 underperforming for
Yeah.
whatever reason, and I think parents got burned out by it. So I think there's probably some hesitation around it being a feature length Lego project that may have contributed
Okay.
to that. But I think you're right that it does seem like it was perhaps written and crafted as a 90-minute film
Yeah.
that they truncated
But
into 4 episodes.
I will also say that it breaks up well into the individual episodes. Like the cliffhangers make sense. There's especially I think at the end of episode 2 is when all the Darth whoever's are coming out of the Dark Falcon, and that's like a great cliffhanger that leads into the 3rd episode. So it works both ways to me, and I'm curious if they'll ever release it in the form that I got to see it at El Capitan, because I think it could be consumed in that way pretty well also, although it's not available that way.
Yeah,
It was only at
they've
that
done
screening.
that. Disney Plus has done that with other short form series where they will basically like it'll be like episodes 1 through 4 are the episodes, and then there'll be like a bonus fifth that's like a
Oh,
play all feature. So there is a precedent. I'm pretty sure the Cars on the Road Pixar shorts
okay.
have that option, and a lot of those other like short form series that they've done where
Yeah.
it'll be like you can watch them all individually, or you can do like a play all at the bottom where it just skips the credits. You go through everything, and then at the end you get like one super credit.
Cool. Yeah, maybe that'll happen. That would be cool to see. And then, yeah, considering thinking about the future of this property, of rebuild the galaxy as its own kind of going concern, I just think there's so much potential here. Not only going forward, like continuing the story from the ending of what we saw here, but going backwards in the way that Star Wars has done so many times. Because I was thinking, well, what's the history of Jedi Vader? You know, why doesn't he know that Luke and Leia are his children? What happened there? You could do a whole prequel trilogy of telling the story of Jedi Vader in the way that you got the prequels for the main Star Wars galaxy. And then on Wikipedia, you'll have the canon, you'll have the Legends timeline, and you'll have the Rebuild the Galaxy timeline, where you start building out this whole third continuity of Star Wars canon. I just think that's there's so much potential here. And the other really cool thing I want to say is when I went to this screening of the first 2 episodes at Century City the other day, they gave me the 3 Lego sets that have come out that are tied in with this special. So I have the Dark Falcon, I have Jedi Bob's Star Speeder or whatever, and then or Starfighter, I think it's called, and then I have the X-Wing and TIE Fighter that are interchangeable, so you could make the X fighters and the TIE wings or whatever that you see in the special. And I'm going to be building all of those on the Laughing Place YouTube channel in the weeks to come. And I'll do little build videos and reviews of all of those. Very excited to dive into those, especially because of the minifigures. You've got all, firstly, the original characters that were created for this series all come in these sets in minifigure form, and then you've got all like the specialty, all the big ones. You've got like Luke, what they call Beach Luke. I'll call him Bro Luke because I kept thinking of Bro Thor from the Avengers Endgame. Um, Darth Jar Jar, Darth Ray, all these characters come in minifigure form in those Lego sets. So I'm very excited to check all of that out, and just follow us on YouTube at Laughing Place, and we'll be diving into those more. Anything else that you would like to say, Alex, about Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy?
Just that I love that like we've come to a point in the like 30 plus years of TV geared towards selling toys that we can now just be like, yeah, these are toys, and if you want these toys, you can go buy these toys.
Yeah,
Like you look back at like
right.
Ewoks the series and Droids the series, or like any of Transformers, My Little Pony, like you name it. From our era of Saturday morning cartoons, everything was really devised as a veiled way to
Yes.
sell a toy. And now we can just be like, yeah, it's toys, and we've made a story with toys, and if you want these toys, you can buy these toys. And I just love that we can be so honest now.
Right. And I want to say that there was a law passed in like the mid to late 80s where they weren't allowed to have on network television a TV series that was just that only existed to sell toys like He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, which I loved growing
If
up,
you
and I had
did,
all the toys.
yeah, and if you did, you had to have like an educational component, which is why Sailor
Yeah.
Moon and Power Rangers had those little post episode wrap ups where they'd
Yeah.
be like, hey kids, you saw this bully do this, you can't do that, and here's why. You know.
And GI Joe. Yeah, GI Joe had the
Yep.
same thing at the
Yep.
end. Yeah, anyway, you can go and watch all 4 episodes of Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy right now on Disney Plus. Let's get into our final segment here on Laughing Place. It's called First Steps into a Larger World. Last night we watched a movie called Civil War on HBO. It's a new movie from Alex Garland. He's a filmmaker that I like. He usually does sci-fi, which he made Ex Machina. He made a what is it called? Annihilation with Natalie Portman. He did the TV series Devs, and this is his new movie. It stars Kirsten Dunst and Nick Offerman, and there's a few other great actors in this one. I thought it was really well made. I think at the end of this film, I was kind of scratching my head as to what the point he was trying to make was. So I didn't really get the I don't know. I didn't walk away kind of learning anything or understanding what the meaning of the whole thing was. Maybe I have to watch it again to understand it. But yeah, I would. I'm kind of on the fence about it for that reason. I thought it was a well-made film, but otherwise, I just didn't quite get the point. How about you, Alex? Anything that you have seen or you want to talk about lately?
Yeah, I do recommend High Potential, the new ABC series that stars Caitlin Olsen from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It's a procedural like case of the week, but she's a very unusual detective, basically just a naturally brilliant photographic memory type of person who's a single mom, works at a cleaning job, and unintentionally ends up helping the police department solve a murder. And so they realize they need this person, kind of a sort of monk-esque in tone, I guess, where it's like she's kind of an imposter. She shouldn't really be there, but she's so good at what she does that they can't live without her. And yeah, I like that show a lot. It's very fun. It is a crime drama, but with a lot of comedy embedded into the DNA. So I recommend checking that out. That premieres tomorrow night on ABC. And other than that, I'm such a Wicked fan, and I'm so excited for the first part of the movie. So I've mostly just been like in my free time. They've been rolling out like all the product tie-ins. Universal has a lot. It's like
Yeah.
a Star Wars level of product, including Lego sets. And so I'm very geeking out about that. And if you are a Star Wars fan who knows nothing about Wicked, consider this the prequel trilogy, but it's a duology of The Wizard of Oz. So instead of how did Darth Vader become Darth Vader, it's how did the Wicked Witch become the Wicked Witch. Uh, and I love it hard.
Does it bother you that the movie is not called Part 1 though? Because they did the same
I
thing
have
with
seen a lot of
It. It came out and it was just called It, and then you get to the end of the movie, it's like to be continued in part 2, and then, what was the other one? Dune was just released as Dune. Like, they're dividing all these stories into 2 parts, and I feel like you and I, because we are tuned in to entertainment news, we kinda know what's up with this stuff, but I do feel like it's a little misleading for the average moviegoer. I don't know, how do you feel about that?
I've seen a lot of discord about it on X, formerly known as Twitter, for Wicked in particular, and I do think there's going to be quite a few people who it just doesn't make their radar that this is only part 1 of 2, and they're going to go
Yeah,
see it in the movie theater, and the credits are going to start to roll after Defying Gravity, which is the Act 1 finale, and they're going to
yeah,
go, wait a minute, where's the rest of the show that I saw? However many years ago you saw it.
yeah,
So yeah, I think there's going to be confusion about that. I've heard the director describe it as part 1 is really Elphaba, the Wicked Witch's story of like
yeah,
her path to becoming the Wicked Witch, and then part 2 is really Glinda's story of her becoming Glinda the Good. And I will say at CinemaCon, when they showed kind of a pretty comprehensive demo reel, I was confused because it had a lot of elements from Act 2 in that reel of what they were promoting as coming out this Thanksgiving.
huh,
But I've heard from somebody that like it's pretty much confirmed part 1 ends with Defying Gravity. So like where the story ends at intermission for the Broadway show is where
right.
movie 1 is going to end. And they've just expanded it and somehow turned each act into 2 hours. I will say the first half of Wicked is the best half, and the second half is kind of a downer. And so I think movie 1 is going to be awesome, and I think movie 2 is going to suck. But I'm still so excited.
And it's John M. Chu, right, who's directing this
John
one?
M. Chu, yeah, he's directing this. He did Crazy Rich Asians, and then
Yeah.
he's now attached to another. Oh, he's doing the Britney Spears movie, which is also right up my alley. So
He is the most successful and famous of, the people I knew in college. So,
oh, awesome.
um, he was at USC with me and my friends group. We didn't hang out with him that much, but I remember him beating us in some, like, movie making contests. So he's got the talent, and I'm very happy for him. He seems like he's doing pretty great.
Yeah,
Okay,
I ended up
that's
next to
yeah.
him at a Bluey event on the Disney lot, and he was watching his toddler do a dance party, and I was just like, I just have to say I'm so excited for Wicked, and then I embarrassedly walked away. But he's
Nice.
really cool.
Yeah, it seems like a cool
I
guy
normally
for
don't
sure.
approach people, but I was like, you're directing Wicked, and I love it.
All right, let's wrap up this episode of Who's the Boss? And I want to thank my guest this week. It's Alex Reif. Alex, thanks again for coming back on the show. As always, great to talk to you about Star Wars. Where can people find you if you'd like to have people find you on the internet?
I'm just, yeah, I'm just on Laughing Place. I'm really not personally online, other than I'm a ghost. I lurk. I have accounts,
Yeah.
but I don't post anything. So
Okay.
you don't need to follow me personally, but if you like the way I write and cover things, continue to follow Laughing Place, the same place that hosts Who's the Boss.
Excellent. And next time on Who's the Boss? I think I still want to do this episode about Star Wars Outlaws, the video game. I just haven't had a tremendous amount of time to play it. I've played some of it. I've seen a few different planets, but there's still a ton of this game for me to explore. And I want to feel like I got at least most of the experience before I talk about it on the show. So that's coming up eventually, but maybe not right away. So stay tuned eventually for that. Otherwise, visit laughingplace.com, of course, for all your Disney news and opinions. That's where Alex and I contribute all our stuff. And then I'm on Instagram at Who's the Bossk Pod. Thanks out there for listening and or watching live. I want to say hi to Sonia for commenting in the comments there. My name is Mike Celestino. Thanks again. May the force be with you, and see you real soon. Bye.